Right now, we're seeing some very significant shit going down in the nation of Colombia. As of the time of this article being written, I think this was from, yes, 4 days ago, 19 people have died. More have died since then. I don't have an accurate and ongoing count, but the number has certainly risen. The reason why these protests began was because of what was essentially a push for austerity following the significant economic harm that COVID brought about. Essentially, the government, the regime, was like, "Hey, we're running out of money over here. What if we taxed you all like way more, even the poor people, and we'll, some business regulations. We'll just squeeze as much money as we can out of you guys." And Colombia is, I did some reading before stream on its history with corruption, and I'll summarize what I read for you. Not the most stable country, it's my professional opinion, and what was already a hotbed, a smorgasbord of political and social problems erupted, and the protests have gotten pretty severe pretty quickly. We have some pretty striking photos here from the pertinent New York Times article. It's interesting because in this I see reflections of what happened over the course of the BLM protests when they were at their height following George Floyd's murder. But, of course, here things got quite a bit worse. Like this bad. I don't know if I can show this video because of Twitch. This is a video of a police helicopter open firing on a group of random passerbys below. I don't think I can show that on Twitch. You can imagine what its contents are. This is with live ammunition. No rubber bullets. Live ammunition. The Colombian police have received, I believe, international condemnation for their propensity to open fire with live ammunition into crowds of protesters. Paramilitary groups have been taking to the streets. There have been, in addition to the deaths, hundreds of people counted missing. In all likelihood, they're probably dead too. I checked sources and have found no evidence of the helicopter firing anything. Is that true? Am I incorrect in this? Because I checked and I saw people speaking on this positively from Colombian media sources. How easily I doubt myself with one person in chat. Well, regardless, let's say that there's some doubt to the veracity of that helicopter firing down on people. There is certainly evidence recorded internationally, journalistic evidence, of police firing with live ammunition on protesters. Now, there is a little bit of nuance to this, because the easy narrative here is that the police are all bastards and they just fired into groups of protesters. And that's completely true. There is, however, more to the story. One of the big issues in Colombia is that the country has remained, let's say, tentatively stable on account of a number of destabilizing forces, one of the most significant of which are the cartels that run drugs from their country to our country so that we can enjoy drugs being grown and transported through their country. The current Colombian regime is generally supported by the United States government, and that regime, along with the United States government, have both expressed a shared interest in, let's say, cracking down on the instability within their country. The issue is, instability like this can't really be addressed through crackdowns. They have to be addressed through real social democratic reform and through a reduction of the systemic forces that lead to the prominence of crime there. Because you have to remember, and a lot of Americans don't remember this, when we think of drug dealers here in America, we're usually talking about distributors who get the drugs that they run from gangs, who get the drugs that they run from shipments up, usually, from south of the border or from port. There are a number of ways to get drugs in America. It's really not hard. But the actual dealers that people deal with day to day are like the hippie college dude, okay? Yeah. directly from the CIA. It goes right to Langley, and then it goes right to the inner city. Okay, that's how it goes. But that's what a lot of Americans think of when they think of drug distribution. Okay, in Mexico, in Colombia, that is not the relationship the average member of the population has to these industries. No, not even close. The cartels in Colombia run essentially as paramilitary organizations. I mean, we're really talking about organized pseudo military cabals that run through hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of drugs. With that much money on the line, they'll do anything whatsoever to protect their stock. And what that includes is roping the population in to support them. See, it would be really, really easy to deal with cartels if it was just like, oh, here are the bad cartels. We just need to send the police over there. But it doesn't work like that. Much like how gangs operate in the United States, they have radiating orbits of influence, civilians that get roped into their trade, people who drive trucks, people who recruit for them, people who play defense for them, lawyers, people who work in government, people who work in the private sector, politicians, all of them orbiting circles around those cartels, those paramilitary gangs, like the mafia. It's all very complicated. And because of that, there's a broader degree of destabilization in Colombia that began to erupt in its own right on account of the austerity measures pushed by the government. If I remember correctly, from what I read, prior to these big protests and the subsequent police crackdowns that took place, there were a number of violent outbursts amongst civilian populations in Colombia. Bosch, you're simplifying a lot here. I mean, I have to, I think, by necessity. We're talking about like the culture and the history and the political problems of an entire nation. I'm from Colombia and I participate in the protests every day since last week. You're misinforming a lot here by relating this to drug cartels. Well, hold on. I wasn't talking about the drug cartels by saying they're responsible for the violence. I was saying that the destabilization to which they contribute makes it difficult to handle social unrest. There are a lot of guns in Colombia, and there isn't a tremendously stable, civil society in the baseline. As I understand it right now, it's basically a fucking free-for-all between innocent civilians being caught between protesters, who are good protesters, drug cartels who are using the instability to carve out political power and using their political influence to try to prevent them from getting caught up in the wake of things, and the police, which are being absolute bastards. Is that can we rely perhaps on that simplification that due to the prior destabilization there was a lot of it was a powder keg, okay? Now, there are some things we can fix and some things we can't. Well, I can't fix. I'm just an American YouTube streamer, but there are some things we can address more substantively than other things. And one of the big issues here is that, as far as I can tell from what I've read, there are basically zero limitations on what the police seem to feel comfortable doing. Oh, somebody linked another from Colombia. There was an army helicopter that is shooting up the peaceful protesters. This happens in Buga, Cali, and other cities of Colombia. We need help. Jesus Christ. Can I... I don't think I can show that on stream, but for a general description, there are a group of civilians recording from over a balcony, and there's a collection of buildings in front of them that are being lit up by aerial fire. So, yeah. Police feel like they, seem to feel like they've got a lot of room to stretch their legs, so to speak. Can you link it? Yeah, sure, here. It's crazy. Jesus Christ. Look. Yeah, there. Look, folks. What's happening right now in Colombia is an abominable violation of human rights. That's not even to speak of the efficacy of the... Yeah, can chat attest? Yeah, chat can attest to the severity of the content in that video. It's a disgusting and abominable violation of human rights. And while I Can't do anything about it. I think it's important to keep a couple of things in mind. First of all, as is always the case, in Latin America at the very least, American influence is a pretty strong contributing factor to the destabilization of this region. Contemporarily, it's not like we're sending in, the Contras to go and murk people. But, I mean, Christ, the entire drug culture of Latin America orbits around the American drug war. I mean, we created a market, a massive, profitable market, and waited for that hole to be filled with people and their means. And the police here are acting about how you would expect police to act in a destabilized country where organized crime and the political structure are merged hand in hand. They are acting like fucking thugs. They're acting like a paramilitary group. And why wouldn't they? How much has the government of Colombia indicated it owes any responsibility to the people of their country? How kind have their politicians been? How decent are they? I'm sure there are good politicians in Colombia, but it seems to me, from what I've read up on, and I'd be happy to look into this more in the future because I admit to some degree of ignorance on this, it seems like the Colombian government has been ineffective, bordering on complicit in addressing its internal corruption, and that America's support for this regime exists in large part because they are effective at keeping Colombia from developing, let's say, anti-American sentiment. Essentially, we have a leash on a barely functioning government here in the United States. Just they keep the lights on. And we are, to an extent, complicit in that relationship, in not demanding more, in not ending this drug war, and therefore cutting down on the market which allows these cartels and the drug trade to thrive. The police, as they act in here, are acting the way you would expect a tyrannical authoritarian regime to act, but Colombia is ostensibly not one of those. It's not supposed to be, at the very least. There is no way out but forward. When countries destabilize like this, when they rise up and demand more than what they've been given, crackdowns will never, ever work. They do not function. They do not succeed in their goal if your goal is to improve the situation. But if your goal is to preserve corruption, to preserve criminality while keeping people quiet, then yeah, army helicopters firing at blocks of peaceful protesters does procure results, at least for a time. So solidarity with the Colombian protesters. Hundreds of them are already missing. Many of them, I assume, are dead. There are people there, many, many people, who are, for the first time, actually, I was going to say for the first time in a long time, but I think Colombia actually has protests relatively frequently. This is just a fairly significant outburst. Not for the first time in a long time, but nonetheless, desire something more than what they've been given. And I hope they're able to get it. Oh, yeah, it is important to point out, by the way, that these protests were organized by the unions in Colombia. Just in case you were wondering who the good guys are here, this isn't just some random smattering of protests. Labor unions were the ones largely organizing this. And by the way, yeah, thank you very much, Noob Jaeger, for that follow-up. I just want to say, by the way, even if there's a lot of violence taking place within civilian populations in Colombia, there was no justification for the police using live ammunition on civilian populations, period, ever, period. Period, comma, period. That's it. That's done, okay? You get to use live ammunition in precisely one instance, and that is when it is immediately necessary to use it to disable somebody who is committing a crime to which you have a moral obligation to stop, even if it involves killing that person, like preventing a murder. Active shooter situations, that kind of dealio, live ammunition, okay, fine. You have an argument. Protests? No. Never.